I'm Russian and I've been living in the US for 2 years. And honestly, when we first moved here, it took me a while to get used to seeing Black people everywhere. In Russia, even in big cities, I mostly saw only Black students. When we lived in Moscow for about 6 months, there were many of them, but it still seemed that there are just a few Black people there. But my daughter had a mixed race friend in her kindergarten. His dad was African American and his mother was Russian. So I become curious, how did Black people first appear in Russia? And the history is older than most people realize. The earliest records go back to the 1500s. African diplomats, merchants, some travelers sometimes reached Moscow through the European countries. There were just individual cases, no communities, no migration waves, but they show early contacts. One of the most famous and popular stories is about Peter the Great. During his travels in Europe, Peter received an African boy, Abram Gannibal, and Peter didn't treat him as a servant. He adopted him into his household, educated him, sent him to France to study engineering, and Gannibal became a military engineer, a general, and a respected nobleman. And his great grandfather is the most popular Russian poet, Alexander Pushkin. But Gannibal's story was unique. There was no migration wave. Again, everything changed in the Soviet era. When African countries gained independence, the USSR wanted the friendly relationships. They invested in education as diplomacy, not just military support. The USSR invited tens of thousands of foreign African students to study medicine, engineering, aviation, chemistry, and humanities. And studies were free, housing, tuitions. It was a huge soft power strategy. Many studied at Moscow State University or St. Petersburg State University, and the most famous international university, RUDN. Some returned home and became doctors, engineers, scientists. Some stayed in Russia and married Russian people and created new Russian Afro-Russian community. And this was the first real formation of Afro-Russian community. Today, you can meet African or Afro-Russian communities in such big cities like Moscow, St. Petersburg, Kazan, Rostov, Yekaterinburg. Some came to study, some was born in Russia, some came for businesses. Russia is not as diverse as the US, but compared to its past, the change is huge. I think many Americans or other foreign people imagine Russia as completely homogeneous. But Russia has 180 ethnic groups, dozens of indigenous people, Central Asian, Caucasus. The African presence in Russia has been evolving for 500 years. And of course, it's a small community, but with a fascinating history.